obvious to them to make the tie-in game to ET. And to be fair, I mean, we did an episode on this for our gaming podcast, and it's actually not really that bad of a game if you actually play it. That's what's kind of amazing. You just kind of have to know what you're doing there. And those games were so infamously obtuse around that time that, I mean, you really had to just get at it and figure it out on your own, or as has been pointed out before, read the goddamn instruction manual. Because apparently, I mean, everything that you needed to know to play this game was in the instruction manual, and kids just didn't really read those at that time. So,
yeah, that's an important game design thing that has come out basically because of those things. Nobody reads manuals, ever. And so, modern day game design knows that if we're going to do something, you have to teach it in the game itself. You can't expect them to look at an outside source. Although, with the number of Wikipedias around games these days, I feel like that's turning on its head.
Like, so many people have played Stardew Valley. I'm like, I got the Stardew Valley game. I got my Stardew Valley wiki. Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Different series that require a spoiler warning will be in the description. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Game Theater Podcast. Today's episode is going to be all about a discussion about the most famous and infamous video games based on films, specifically. So, in order to help me out with that, I have a couple of guests on my side, and that will help me out with this topic. Now, once again, my name is Leo. I'm known as Geek Scorpio, and I will be your host this evening. And over to my right is going to be...
I am Rob. I am a game design student.
All right. And with that, over to their right is going to be...
my name is Liz. I go by Zombiehand. I do a lot of work for GTP, and I am an artist and soon to be a university student again.
All right. And over to there, a very special guest on the show today.
Hi, I'm Bo Maddox. I'm from Collateral Cinema, the only movie podcast that matters. And I'm also a little bit of an audio engineer, and I've done a little bit of filming and stuff like that, and YouTube stuff. So yeah, that's more or less my bailiwick.
All right. And before we get started with all that, let's go ahead and take a quick trip over to the magical merch booth. Here we are at the magical merch booth, and today with us is Bo from Collateral Cinema. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and where we can find it?
Well, as I said earlier, we are the only movie podcast that matters. We focus on good movies, bad movies, and everything else in between in the world of cinema. We've been going for 8 seasons now. We generally just kind of talk about movies in general, like a little bit of everything. And, we do kind of try to have like months where we focus on something specific. Like we have anime month, or we'll have, we do a 420 special, or we'll have like a month where we just do bad movies. So, We do have all kinds of ways that you can check us out. We're on all of the socials, of course, Blue Sky, where I met everyone here, and the Twitter and all that. And also, we do have a merch store on TeePublic. You can check out our affiliate link. We usually have it on our socials. And also, you can find us on Patreon and on Buy Me a Coffee and whatnot. On our TeePublic affiliate link, we're going to be putting together some new designs. Right now, we just have our logos on our t-shirts for now, but we're going to come up with some interesting stuff that's kind of specific to the podcast here. So some of our little catchphrases and whatnot. So look for that.
All right. I actually do want to check that out later on that. I wanted to see if that got started with the shirts for GTP. See?
Hey, nice. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Yeah. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and go back to the show. So today today's episode is going to be us discussing about the most famous and infamous movie tie-ins to video games. So movie tie-ins to video games kind of have been around for a long time, even some of the earlier days, about actually even earlier than the 70s. The oldest video game movie I can think of is Atari actually had a Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game. Of all things that Atari has, they had one of those early in their development for it. But in general, the reason why a lot of companies will do that is mostly because that way they have a licensed product and you would be able to make money by, merchandising. It's short and simple like that. Now, because of that, they kind of vary in quality. I think we should start with what's considered the worst one of them all, which is
boy.
E.T.
I knew that one was coming.
Oh, you can't talk about this without talking about E.T., which I always found it hilariously ironic because the person who developed the game also is the same guy who developed Yar's Revenge. Yar's Revenge is considered one of the best games to come out of the Atari era. So, which means that he not only made the best game, he also made the worst game.
Oh, wow.
I mean, versatility is important when you're a game designer. You can't
Absolutely.
just crank out the same thing over and over again, right?
Nope, just gotta go ahead and let this rip. I've seen it before, and there's documentaries that are out there about E.T., which for those who are not in the know about this type of storytelling for it, E.T. got so notoriously famous that it was so bad that depending on how you see it, it didn't cause, like we've talked about this game before in previous past episodes about from gaming history, it didn't actually cause the what's called Atari shock or the video game crash of 1982, I think 82, 83.
Yeah.
So it didn't actually cause the video game crash. It was, however, the last straw that caused that crash. And for those who don't know, what causes the crash for that one is simply just overflooded the market with just really, really trash games.
I think kind of at the time, way back when, it was just, I think producers and people who were funding the movie were just thinking, okay, we need tie-ins, we need merch to sell. Video games are good. So they're sort of equating it to the same thing as like an action figure or something like that. And so they're going to put in about as much effort. And you could get away with that back in the Atari days. The games were fairly simple and fairly short. They didn't generally involve a ton of design work in there. You could make them relatively quickly.
Another big part of that is that, video games at that time were more or less seen as toys and not necessarily like an actual medium by that point and everything. So,
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess that's what made it kind of obvious to them to make the tie-in game to E.T. And to be fair, I mean, we did an episode on this for our gaming podcast, and it's actually not really that bad of a game if you actually play it. That's what's kind of amazing. You just kind of have to know what you're doing there, and those games were so infamously obtuse around that time that, I mean, you really had to just get at it and figure it out on your own, or as has been pointed out before, read the goddamn instruction manual. Because apparently, everything that you needed to know to play this game was in the instruction manual, and kids just didn't really read those at that time. So
yeah, that's an important game design thing that has come out basically because of those things. Nobody reads manuals, like ever. And so, modern day game design knows that if we're going to do something, you have to teach it in the game itself. You can't expect them to look at an outside source. Although, with the number of Wikipedias around games these days, I feel like that's turning on its head.
Like, how many people have played Stardew Valley? I'm like, I got the Stardew Valley game. I got my Stardew Valley wiki. I have not played these with these similarly. But yeah, so like, the short end of the story of E.T. is they end up having about less than 6 months by the time they get through negotiations, development, actually getting it signed off by Steven Spielberg because he's the main producer, so they have to get his permission to do all that. When they get all that down, they had less than 6 months and a very small, and back then teams were small. Like, and so you didn't have the manpower that we do, like hundreds of people making one game like we do nowadays, and that's almost a minimal depending on the size of your studio. So with that, they had the one guy developing this in 6 months. Also, it's got to work because again, this is Atari days. There's no patching, there's no fixing. You got to get it right the first time. Which was funny because the specs for that game make it look like it would have been like the first big 3D shooter if he did it right.
Wow.
So like, it's just amazing for that one. But that starts a trend for that. So we have you have the video game Crash, and then the video game Crash kind of takes it into a weird turn, but then you end up having other licenses for that. If we are going chronologically, at the next iteration for that, you have the Nintendo coming out in the 85. And then also, you still have huge hits of films that can become franchises. People forget this, but Star Wars, which has licensing all over the place for video games. Like, they currently hold the record for the most licensing for the most amount of video games for one licensed thing.
I believe
held,
that.
for one licensed film is held by Star Wars.
Jeez.
And so, like, they have this, and they are Star Wars did some interesting arcade games back in the day. They had vector graphic arcade games, so it was like you were in a cockpit and you were just shooting at things for it because you were an X-wing fighter.
Were those the ones that had like the green lines on the screen?
The monochrome ones.
Because I had an old MS-DOS computer that had a Star Wars game where you were trying to shoot into the Death Star, but it was like one of those ones where it was like the green lines that were coming towards you to show.
Oh yeah, they were all just lines, right?
Yeah, it was just the green lines that was supposed to represent the geometry, but obviously this is an MS-DOS computer.
Yeah, those are Vectrex graphics, I think they call them.
Yeah,
Vector, because they just used vector lines to draw everything for it.
That was actually a fun game, though, so that doesn't...
So, I mean, there could be fun and such for it. So when we talk about that's the thing people... That used to be a genre thing. Different video game companies out there would have, like, for example, one big one is LJN, as I think it's named. But it's also kind of a joke, because, like, some of the worst games ever made for the Nintendo and part of the SNES is made by that company.
It did give us some of the best AVGN episodes, though.
I mean, that is true.
Yeah, it gave us the best Angry Video Game Nerd episodes. And he actually culminated it in a big old like LJN multi-episode review, which was cool.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's funny because there is a reason for that. It's Nintendo back in the day would have a limit to how many video games they would produce per creator. So, like, if you were Capcom, I think the limit was like 12 or 8. I forget what the number is, but it's almost not even the double digits. That you could only have so many of them produced for a company during that one time. So if you're getting close to like having, oh no, I've already made my 5. I can only make 3 more, and I don't want to wait another couple of years so I can release these, because there was a time limit on it. You can make 12 per at so many years. So what they did was they would take the games that they didn't put too much effort to it and shoved it to another company to like a subsidiary, because it's per company. So, and that's what LJN did, was they took over for a bunch of these. Was like, all right, we'll make whatever.
Wow.
But then that's why you have classics like Friday the 13th, where 3 of the characters are broken. And I mean, broken in a bad way. They were unplayable.
Yeah, that game is really a trip, because I mean, you can easily get lost on that map. I mean, you have no indication of where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. I mean, how you're actually supposed to fight Jason. It was crazy. It was like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah, I didn't know fighting all these zombies would actually get me is actually experience points. They don't tell you that anywhere. That's actually experience points you're getting from that. And then once you've racked up so much of that, that's what unlocks. It unlocks the ability to get the next weapon, but it doesn't unlock the next weapon. You actually have to pick it up like a random drop. So one of those monsters will eventually drop the next weapon, and then you have to jump and take it.
Wow.
But then at some point you have to go into this cave where you have to deal with the severed head of Jason's mother, which only half the characters can make the jump physically to actually jump over the chasm to make it to the end to actually get there. So if all you got is the characters that have never did a leg day to save your life, no, they're just deal with it. You're got this little lousy weapon. Go ahead and do your best, buddy. Jason Voorhees will remember you.
Oh my God, really? I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth. I never really got that far into that game, and I never even knew about the experience points things with the zombies either. Up until now, I'm like, now I'm going to have to go back and play that game and actually apply that knowledge and see if it makes it any better. You know, if it makes it for a better experience.
Better experience, probably. Better time with it.
Probably not. I don't know.
But yeah, and then there's other LGN games. My favorite one of my favorite video game nerd movie shows is the one about Top Gun, which was true. And me as a kid trying to play Top Gun also had that problem. You have to go fly your plane. You have to go fight off things. Cool. Now I need you to just land on the aircraft carrier. That's all I need to do. Go ahead and land on the aircraft carrier. Simplest thing. And then I've never gotten past the first stage.
It's like a Sisyphean feat. I mean, Jesus.
Was this the one where like you needed the Nintendo Power Glove to do it properly, but if you had that, it was super easy?
Yeah, because it would overcorrect yourself and then you would make it land. That was not just every video game like fun thing that he did. No, that actually I had to talk to our friend Steve Divilsarf, who's been on the show before, and he used to own a Power Glove. He goes, no, there's a thing with the Power Glove where for that game specifically, it autocorrects a lot of the stuff that you would make. So you would just land perfectly a lot.
Wow, so it'd be pretty much like kind of glitches his way into landing, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Wow. Damn. I mean, I don't know. I never had a Power Glove, so.
Yeah, I didn't either. But yeah, so like, these are some of the worst games out there. Ghostbusters, the video game, notoriously bad. You only had 2 of the 4 Ghostbusters that throughout most of the game, and only a third one shows up on the NES game at the end, and it is literally a slog to climb up, because you have to climb. So in the movie of Ghostbusters, to those who haven't seen it, and this is spoiler heavy podcast, and also Ghostbusters is nearly 40 years, that's on you for not seeing it at this point.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, though, they have to get to Dana Parrott's apartment, which is on the 50th floor. So in the game, you have to crawl up 50 floors of stairs. That's the end of the game. Get up to climb 50 stairs without getting hit once.
Oh my
God. It was ridiculous.
Well, and bear in mind, a lot of the reason that some of these games are bad was just because it's hard to make a good game when you only have 8 bits.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're trying to live up to a movie that had, millions of dollars, behind it, and all these people working on the special effects and all that, and they could control exactly what was happening because it's a movie and they have to follow a script. And now you're trying to transfer that into a game where you can, why can't we have more than 2 Ghostbusters? Well, we don't have the memory for 4 Ghostbusters. I'm sorry, that's not happening. 2 Ghostbusters, you take what you can get. And so, as we move on in tech that's able to catch up a little bit to what a movie can do, naturally that is going to lead to a better gaming experience. Because they're not necessarily trying to make a good game. They're just trying to make something that you'll buy because you saw the movie.
Yep, at the end of the day. And didn't it have some kind of mechanic where you literally had to go and buy your ghost-busting equipment as well?
Yeah, you had to go buy your ghost-busting equipment, but you had to bust ghosts to get that. You also had to remember it had a mini game between each building that you're trying to capture a simple ghost there. The mini game also has gas cans. If you, for some reason, miss all the gas cans, this is hilarious to me, the car will stop, run out of gas, and the 2 Ghostbusters have to go out and start pushing the car to the nearest gas station. So we don't have enough memory to put in to put in the entire team, but we do have it where if you lost gas, you can just go carry it. You have to push the car.
Why even make that a thing? I mean, why?
I also suspect there was a fair bit of spite when making these video games. Like, I didn't necessarily want to work on Ghostbusters, the video game. I had my own cool franchise that I wanted to start here. But no, they're making me work on Ghostbusters. So, you know what? Push your car.
They're going to make you push this. Which is funny because, like, and I'll do another episode later about television tie-ins because, weirdly enough, they get some of the better of the visual things. Like, there is a Ghostbusters arcade game, but that's based on the... it's actually a reprint of another video game, but it's based off the cartoon. And that thing is a combination of, like, how do I want to put this? It's a combination of, like,
I remember it being similar to like a twin stick shooter, right?
It's a twin stick shooter, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a 3-person twin stick shooter.
Wow.
Co-op with actually a really good ghost busting mechanic in there too. Now, yeah, I'll come back to Ghostbusters later too.
Yeah, I've played that game before. I remember it in the arcades, and yeah, it was fine. It was just fine, honestly.
So that's also an interesting take. There are arcade versions of video of movie ports to that. Probably one of the most famous ones is the Terminator 2 rail shooter that they had for a while.
I love that game.
It was so good. I do know a weird fun fact about that. They couldn't, for scheduling reasons. So let me backtrack a little bit. The game is made by Midway Williams. That's the name of the company for it. I forget if it's Midway at the time or Williams, but later Midway will become the dominant force when they get into Mortal Kombat. Yeah. But anyway, one of the things that they revolutionized is they would film people doing the actions, and they digitized that film into their game specs for that. And that's how they designed it early on. So there's an actor who's acting all the motions for that, and they put it in there. Their earliest game was, I think, Narc, and that's how they got a weird, almost photorealistic video game look for it, is because they actually filmed them all and digitized those films and made it work within the game for that. So that being said, they use that technology for Mortal Kombat. That's why we have live action. The earlier Mortal Kombats have live action performers for that. Now, when they got to the license to do Terminator 2 Judgment Day, they got the chance to get all the actors, most of the actors, to do their parts. Like Robert Patrick, who was the T-1000, but they couldn't get Arnold Schwarzenegger. But they had the rights to do his voice lines. They didn't have him there to do the motion capture, so they got his stunt double to do the work, which is from the movie.
Fantastic! That is amazing. I mean, when you think about it, that's probably the closest you're really going to get to Arnold Schwarzenegger, physique-wise, probably.
The guy who looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, brilliant. But they apparently had to apply a couple of prosthetics on masking, so his face did look more like Arnold's.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
But that game was amazing, and so this is sort of the crux of this part, is that just because video games that are based off of films have a bad notoriety, that doesn't mean that they are necessarily bad games on that. In fact, there's a couple of games that are really well designed, but Terminator is like the earliest one I can remember that was actually a really good game, and that was mostly the arcades.
Well, another movie-based arcade game that that I played recently on our Collateral Let's Play Beat 'em Up Fridays was Moonwalker, which was the Michael Jackson movie. Where he transforms into the robot and saves all the children and everything, and it actually is a really, really decent beat 'em up. Like, if you actually play it, it's kind of isometric more than anything, and it's got all the Michael Jackson-isms in it and everything. All that
the power
stuff.
of dance to clear the screen. I remember
absolutely, that. and it's even better in the arcade, honestly. Because I mean, they have like robot enemies that are dancing and everything. I mean, it's fantastic.
Boss, we could totally shoot him. Oh, that looks like the groove is coming. We gotta stop and dance. Living
Yeah,
up my
Smooth-
lifelong dream to be a backup dancer, boss.
It's like, wait. It's Smooth Criminal. I gotta go, man. I gotta go.
do this.
I gotta do this.
If we ever get a new Elite Beat Agents game or like a port of the DS one, they should have a Michael Jackson DLC where
Absolutely.
he plays as one of the agents.
That would be cool.
Do you want to know a crazy weird story about the Moonwalker that happens in video games that makes very weird sense? So, Michael Jackson is actually made Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, that the movie for it, that because it is a short movie, as I think it's how it's officially listed as, because it's not long enough to be a feature film, but it's too long to be like a television episode or however they decided.
It's an extended music video, kind of.
Yeah, it's ultimately an extended music video, but they treated it like a film, so it'll count for purposes. So they do that, and then with that, Sega gives them a license to asks if they can do if they can have the permission to work with Michael Jackson, and he's like, sure, and you can do this game. And Sega is the one who makes Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, and so the Sega Genesis is when it's originally designed was actually based off arcade technology. So when they did that, they wanted to translate it over. It didn't work right, so they just remade the game. So Michael Jackson relicensed his music for it, so that way they could make that game for Moonwalker, which gave him access to Sega, and Sega asked him to do music for one particular game. He did some of the music tracks to Sonic 3, specifically the ice stage on that.
And I don't think that it was ever actually put into the game, though, because of some legal issues between and licensing issues or whatever. Like, I don't know. I think it was some personal row with Michael Jackson and Sega that happened. But for some reason, they didn't end up using all of his tracks that he made, which is a damn shame.
They only used it, which is a shame because he did a track for everything in Sonic. The only one that they actually used is the one for the ice stage. I know that's the one that he went under a pseudonym, but he did a pseudonym for a lot of different music tracks that he was working on for other projects.
Yeah.
So that was like the weirdest way to get Sega to connect Michael Jackson to Sonic the Hedgehog. Done.
Yeah, and it makes sense because Michael Jackson was a huge gamer. I mean, the man had an arcade in Neverland, so you know.
Oh yeah. So with this, I'm going to jump around a lot for different games just because I think some of these are fun and cool. Some of them will hit so you kind of bump into this thing with video game licensing, and when we get to the Super Nintendo era, we start getting, and the Sega era, they go kind of hard with their licensing for stuff. One of my favorite games back then, and this is not related to this, but it'll come up in another episode, Cool Spot. It is cool you can be by rescuing 7-Up. We have a game licensed for a soda. I'm in.
Oh, they had a game licensed for the Noid for Domino's back in the day.
Exactly.
For those who are old enough to remember the Noid and that whole thing.
So they would do licensing things on it. What's funny is that now we're starting to get into the point where they're putting a lot more quality into the video games for it. And you'll see this pop up on TikTok and on Twitch streamers and such when they have to compare Lion King and Aladdin. Because what is it? Lion King is ridiculously hard if you don't know what you're doing in that game.
I still haven't made it past that second level on Lion King all these years. I still haven't.
That freaking stampede.
Oh,
I think that it being difficult on top of like not having the ability to save really makes it extremely difficult, because if you do get farther into the game, you're like, God forbid you die, and then you just like, I love those reaction videos when somebody is like halfway through the game and then they die and they're like, oh, when was the last autosave, and it takes them back to the main menu. It's like oh God. Oh, you sweet summer child, that did not exist back then.
And going back to the Lion King, I think there was one of the ports of that game was actually busted. It glitched out to where you couldn't actually progress past like the third level or something like that. I think it was.
My God.
I think it may have been maybe the Game Gear version, or maybe the Genesis,
I think
or maybe the Super Nintendo version.
It's not the. I know it's not the Sega version because that's the one I actually beat.
Yeah.
And that was a pain and rough, and like it was a lot of trial and error to figure out what that is. Can't wait to be king. I can't wait to get out of the instant level. That's what that was all about.
Yeah, you have to hear that damn song over and over again.
Aladdin was a different take though. Like the Super Nintendo version was longer, but it was also easier in comparison to the Sega version of that game.
The Sega version was really more of an action game. The Super Nintendo version was a bit more of a puzzle platformer. There was still some combat, but it was more focused on the platforming than the Sega version was.
It almost felt like Prince of Persia a little bit, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I never did beat the Super Nintendo one because I didn't own a Super Nintendo as a kid, and I've only ever played it on an emulator, and so the emulator does not work properly for the Super Nintendo Aladdin.
Oh, I gotcha.
But I played the crap out of the Genesis version as a kid. Oh my gosh, I love that game so much.
Oh yeah, so good.
This is like for video games. This is when you're finally starting to get to the point where like, okay, now we can make something really good that's more true to the movie experience. We have the memory, we have the graphics. We can and we've got some experience. We've learned from our days back in Atari and NES. Now we can really start expanding into something that isn't just kind of sort of somewhat like the movie, but that we're like really drawing on, I can put this scene into the game now.
And then meanwhile, they released like a Wayne's World game where like it's just like nonsensical, like the level design is just all over the place. And then like there's like repeat characters and everything, and it's just like, wait, what is this? Where's this supposed to be in the movie? It's like, I mean, they like maybe they'll have like the headbanging scene, but that's about it. It's like what the hell?
Because you're also now running into the problem of the game is longer than the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
The movie was only an hour and a half long. The game we need this to go on for like 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So there's
and that's just if you're doing like your action platformer or whatever.
Yeah. So they had to throw in like a good like 20 levels or so to kind of pad that out, and then of course the level design had to be just, really obtuse, and then there's just the annoying like they're like, whoa, it was like not like all that shit like happening every other second throughout that game. So I mean, it just amazes me that they even really tried to make Wayne's World into a goddamn game. It's like, how do you do that? Like, what the hell?
What's weird is this isn't Wayne's World is probably the weirdest example for that one. So if you played it for like the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, you got a platformer, classic jumping and puzzles like that. However, there was a PC version of that. It's not a platformer. It's a point-click adventure game for some reason.
Oh, wow.
Where I have to travel from place to place. It is hard to find because it might just be borderline abandonware at this point, or nobody cares. But there was so many of them. I remember I bumped into RoboCop in the arcade was super cool, but like RoboCop when it ported to anything but the arcade, you just got this dip in quality like crazy.
Oh, seriously? Yeah. I mean, I that is one of those arcade games that I always love to gravitate to because I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You just walk and you shoot, and that's pretty much it.
I can punch out a thug, and you don't just punch a thug. Your fist just hits them, and they just fly to the other end of the screen.
Exactly.
You can punch 4 in a row because you're RoboCop.
That was fun.
But like you get into the like, there's a Nintendo port, and then and it was just really confusing. A weird ported game that I played, no, not a port. It's just it used a similar mechanic as RoboCop. Was Darkman.
Oh yeah.
Darkman was confusing on that one. It came out for the Nintendo, and because Darkman's ability is that he can put the skin and look like another person, like realistically like another person. But apparently, putting on this other person's skin always made you change your stats for no real reason. You're still Darkman. You're just wearing a mask. But no, I gotta be the chunky guy, so now I can't jump as high.
That makes no sense at all. What the hell?
Yeah, you're like you do know you're just wearing a padded suit. You're not even wearing a suit. Just put it away. Oh, and this is one up Zombiehand's. Hey Liz, do you remember Nightmare on Elm Street for like the PC and how confusing that was?
I played the old MS-DOS Friday
That's the one
13th,
I'm talking about.
or Nightmare on Elm Street game. Yeah, the one, like, at the time it was so scary to me. Like, I struggled to play it, and then I looked up pictures of it like a couple years ago, and I was like, yep, that's the child brain, like, warping this into something that's so different. And I remember there just being like fire, and you have to like go through the house, and you're being chased by Freddy, and you're like going through houses and buildings and stuff that were puzzles, and parts of it were on fire and you couldn't go through the fire. And then like when you actually got out of a building, it would like take you to a street view. And like at the time I was like, oh my God, that's so scary. And looking back, I'm like, that was not scary. But it was fun.
Yeah, kids.
I think I was also like 7 when I played it. So.
Yeah. I mean, kids will write a lot in between the lines when it comes to that sort of thing. You know, that's just kind of how you are when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm. I remember the Nintendo version of that game, which sort of went backwards from the plot. So Freddy Krueger wants you in his dreams because he's more powerful in that dream. Okay? When you're walking around, also, weirdly enough, this is one of the earliest like Nintendo 4-player games that they actually had. I don't know why they gave it that.
I haven't even seen any footage of a 4-player action on this game ever. I can't even
nobody
recall.
ever plays it for action. I just know it has the option for it. Like you have to get a special multi-tap. You had to do a couple of other things, but you could. It's there. They even have player 1, player 2, which are all played simultaneously, and 2 other spots that nobody will ever use because you need to find 4 people who want to play this game.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like, where are you going to find 4 kids who would be like, no, I just want to play Nightmare on Elm Street from LJN,
and then. And from LJN, and then you get to the point where, oh no, because at some point your character just falls asleep, or a character falls asleep. So if we were playing this right now and Zombiehand fell asleep, everyone go night night. We all got to go to take a nap. Oh no, Jason! Oh no, Freddy is here, wanting to attack us. I wish we didn't all fall asleep at the exact same time. But it's cool because in this dream stage, I'm a ninja. Like,
that's
you actually get powered up every time you go to sleep. I'm like, why am I?
It's like they were going off of Dream Warriors logic, where everybody gets powers in their dream. It's like, well, wait a second, that game wasn't out at this time. that movie wasn't out at this time. Like, what the hell?
I just find it hilariously. All right, if they fall asleep, I can really manipulate their dreams. Oh no, a chainsaw wielding maniac coming after Freddy Krueger. I did not see this coming.
Maybe the Freddy or the Nightmare on Elm Street game was based off the movie, but then Dream Warriors was like, that was fire. Let's put that into Dream Warriors.
Could be.
Maybe.
Dream Warrior was
maybe.
My sister and I did a binge of all of those movies a few years ago.
That's always fun.
It's such a fun. Freddy used to scare her to the point where like she couldn't think about him before she went to bed, or she would have nightmares and like struggle to get to sleep. And so we just like binge watched all of them, and we're like, no, it's just campy. It's like, it's fun, goofy.
It's like soul food for my boy.
Yeah.
Yes, that is an actual line that Freddy Krueger says in one of his movies. I think it's Dream Child.
Oh man. Oh, so, but games are getting better. So like when you get to the Super Nintendo and Genesis days, they worked it out. Now once you get to the PlayStation, I believe this is when we start getting into this weird case where people like are basically picking up licenses left and right. Mostly because at this point, games aren't a fad or just a hobby. People are just playing them to play them now. Let's go hammer it out. I remember my first video game esque title is from the Evil Dead series. And so they had Evil Dead. I think the first one's Hail to the King is what I think of in the trilogy or the PlayStation era.
I had that game back in the day on the PlayStation, and I remember it as far as a Resident Evil clone, it was fine, but man, were the controls kind of spotty, you know? And also combat wasn't the combat wasn't particularly great either. I remember.
Oh yeah, no. I'll be honest with you. What sold that game to me is Bruce Campbell being able to replay as Ash, and he just stuck with it. He had something like thousands of extra lines for no real reason, but he is spot on as a voice actor delivery. He can do the wrong with it.
Oh yeah, I mean it was the biggest expansion of the Evil Dead universe up until the series came out. You know, so I mean it actually kind of expanded upon what happened in Evil Dead 2. And I think a little bit of Army of Darkness, a little bit
of Army of Darkness. They make a play for that, and then there's another Evil Dead game that came out after that one, which instead of playing like Resident Evil, plays like an action adventure shooter.
Yeah, I never really got into that one though.
That one was like, I'll be honest, it gets really repetitive for pretty quickly in that.
Borderlands, but Evil Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I see.
I don't know if that's true. I picked up on it. Borderlands, but Evil Dead.
I'd buy it.
I know you would.
Then they had the third one in that series was actually really well done. It just was left itself open for a sequel, and nobody picked up on it.
Damn.
Which I think it's Dead Before Dawn on that one. That's what it's called. But yeah, Bruce Campbell will make a career of voice acting himself in a video game, especially for Ash and such. And that's the only way he wants to play Ash now, because it is way too fair enough. It is a physically demanding role for him to play Ash on that.
Yeah, you can tell that he was kind of pushing himself on the Ash versus Evil Dead series. He was kind of pushing himself a little bit on that. You could tell physically.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Just a demanding role, and he's the only one that's to play it. And I think there's a licensing thing where only he's allowed to play it. They play Ash in live action. But I know only live action has that stipulation, not voice acting, because he's been Ash Williams for every character game except for one, which is Telltale's Poker Night 2. That was somebody else who played him. Great voice actors. It sounded exactly like him, but it wasn't him on that.
Damn.
Before I forget, I want to mention this before we move on too far away from the PlayStation era, but if you guys were in the Sega Genesis days, did you guys get a chance to play the Jurassic Park games for that?
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, it was they were very different games between the Super Nintendo and the Genesis. Which one was the one that had the brief first-person shooter mechanic? Was it Super Nintendo or Genesis?
Super Nintendo had that.
It was Super Nintendo, yeah. That was the one that I played, and honestly, that's another one of those games that's really, really demanding, and like you can pretty much die on one hit, and that's pretty much the game. The game is over. So, I mean, other than that, it was an okay game, I thought.
It's an okay game. It wasn't the best out there, and it tried to do a lot of stuff.
The arcade light gun game, though, that was a lot of fun.
That was super fun.
Yeah.
The Genesis, I think, won out when it came to Jurassic Park on this one. Because in the first, because they have two Jurassic Park games. The first one based on the first movie, and the second one based on Lost World.
Lost World was an incredible Genesis game, honestly. I still remember because they didn't follow the plot to the movie all that much. No. Like I think there was like spring, but they were basically like, yeah, we're just gonna kind of use Jurassic Park as a setting rather than a script, and decided to go with that. And I think that was maybe for the best.
It was. It had a unique thing, which you actually start seeing it in other games like Take-Two and such. When at certain points in the game, because you can play it in single player, but you can also play it in multiplayer. If you played it in multiplayer with a second player, it gave you a bunch of extra options for playing it as a second player. So one of the first, after you've done everything, you go into the first like mini game, which is actually their version of a boss fight, which is like, think a T-Rex is chasing you and you have to ride a motorcycle while shooting back at the T-Rex. If you're you're driving through a forest, which is already hard enough to do that in single player. If you play it in multiplayer, though, you only have to concentrate on one or the other, not both. So somebody else is taking on the dinosaur while you're trying to drive way through. And all their mini games were based like that. For having a second player, the second player has different options than the first player does.
Interesting.
Which I think is sweet. But yeah, it's first Sega Genesis games that was the first Sega Genesis Jurassic Park was amazing because you could play it. So if you played it with Alan Grant and his goal is to get himself out of Jurassic Park, kind of like the movie. Or you can play a raptor that's hunting Alan Grant throughout the entirety of Jurassic Park.
That's awesome. Hell yeah.
But yeah, so like you could divide those up for it. It was amazing. But this is where you're sort of, but Rob's right. This is sort of where we get into using it more of a set piece than we do as a one-to-one for the film, which I think is a better way to go with that. And you start getting into like ones like we were talking about with Evil Dead, where it uses the movie as a set piece for the game instead of actually trying to retranslate that. That might be the weirdly one of the bigger ones I know of in the PlayStation, but I know that they had a bunch of other movie tie-in games. Not all of them super great. Like they had the first Spider-Man game on that one, which wasn't based on the first movie, which wasn't great, but the second one is amazing. But that's for PlayStation 2.
Yeah. The PlayStation 2 Spider-Man 2 game, that's the one that kind of really got the web slinging mechanics down. Like pretty much every other Spider-Man game after that, it pretty much set the standard for it up until the PS4 one came out. So
and even then, their bones is in the Spider-Man 2 engine to make it work right. And you see that in Spider-Man, in the latest of Spider-Man remastered and the Spider-Man PlayStation games, and even Marvel Rivals, they use the same similar mechanic for that one.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I actually remember early on in my game schooling when we were first doing our team games. Like, this is the first time we're getting together in a team to make a game. One of the first things they told us was do not make a grappling hook in your game, because it is very difficult and you're all still very new to this whole game design thing. And if you try it, it's not going to work right because there's all sorts of these things that you need to do to get it to work right. And so naturally, of course, like 3 people decided they were going to make a game centering around a grappling hook because that's what you do when someone tells you not to do something. But like that for Spider-Man, I think that's like a critical part of Spider-Man, the character, is having that sort of grappling hook or web swinging part into the game. And I think like when you get that right, you don't want to mess with it too much.
No, not at all.
And so that's why, and they have improved on it over the years, as new games have come out, they have made the web swinging better, but it was really good in Spider-Man 2 originally. When it came out, it was good. We don't want to mess with that too much. We've got perfection here. Let's not screw around with it.
Yeah, that was when they finally figured out that, hey, Spidey's actually supposed to link his webbing to a building to swing and not just straight up into the sky. Like in the first Spider-Man game on PlayStation, or even the first PS2 Spider-Man game based on the movie.
Yeah, can't go to the sky. It doesn't feel right.
No.
But you connect it to a building, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, until you go through Central Park and they let you hit your web to the sky, because otherwise web swinging is basically impossible. And I'm okay with that.
I do love it in like the Spider-Man for the PlayStation, because if you get into the Central Park, you have to change your tactic. You can't swing out. You have to like jump from tree to tree and hope you don't hit another tree on your way out. It's a mess.
Jeez.
We stay out of Central Park. Nobody wants to go in there.
Yeah, right.
Or like when you go to any of the edges of Manhattan, and now you can only swing from your left. That's always a fun way.
Oh wow, yeah. When you hit the outer wall, the invisible wall, yeah.
Which you have to work to hit that invisible wall. There's water everywhere there, but it's there unless you get on the bridge. Yeah. So about this time, you also have Goldeneye, which anyone who's owned an N64, that was like your staple You might have Mario 64. You have to also have GoldenEye. And if you're on that trilogy, you get you get Legend of Zelda. Those were your 3 N64 titles.
Yeah, definitely. And GoldenEye was great. I mean, how many of us have done multiplayer with just karate chops? It's just judo chops.
Oh yeah,
that is so much fun.
I still remember back in the day, our one of our game modes was the explosive mines down in I forget what the level was called, but it was the basement with all the like columns.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I know what you're.
So basically, it was every 3 steps that you take, something's blowing up.
Oh, jeez.
And you can't tell where it's coming from. That's our favorite game mode.
Yeah,
that sounds chaotic.
Oh, it is.
It was,
super
yes.
Yeah.
What was it? Archives, by the way, was the name of that stage.
Okay.
Right. And what's weird, I was sitting going through that with it, like, why is this file cabinet exploding? What do they keep in these? Like, there are so many things that will explode in GoldenEye.
Because this is a James Bond game, and there are explosions in James Bond. That's how we do. Okay.
Its soundtrack was really amazingly well done too for that game. I love it where I'm sitting there, all right, because it's like the epitome of, okay, I need you to make a game music for this for a video game time into this. You don't have to try too hard. Oh, you don't? No, I gotta set this soundtrack on fire. Even the pause music's amazing. That's how this is happening.
Hey, to this day, I still hear all kinds of GoldenEye music on YouTube, music mixes for N64 music. It's pretty much go-to stuff, you know?
Yeah, and it works. It knows what it's all about. Oh, but yeah, so like at this point, you have a top tier rated game, which also is a tie-in to a film, which is almost like even a couple of years ago, you would never even think of that as an option for yourself.
Yeah. But
here we are.
Well, and GoldenEye, I think because the competitive multiplayer really set it apart, like, there a lot of the movie games that you get aren't really like that, they're going to be a single player deal and you go through it by yourself and then that's it. And then that's at the end of the game. GoldenEye, they had that and it was fantastic. But they also had the multiplayer, so now you can play it with all your friends, and that's what made the game huge.
Absolutely. And also the ability to play as all your favorite Bond characters as well,
Was it Oddjob is the one I'm thinking of that was designed smaller than everybody else?
That's
yeah, he's the one that everybody
banned every time.
Yeah, everybody gets upset if you pick Oddjob. Yeah. He's just got that tactical advantage of, being a little shorter,
You got to aim down to get that headshot. I can't let you have that.
And I think that really speaks to another thing that made GoldenEye so good. The people that made it cared. They were fans of the genre. They were fans of the series. You could tell because of how much work they put in. They didn't have to put in, Oddjob. He wasn't in GoldenEye. There were tons of characters that they put in that were just from the franchise. And the vast majority of them, they weren't there in the GoldenEye movie itself. They didn't really have anything to do with anything. They were put in there because the developers loved the series and wanted to put them in there.
Absolutely.
When you care about the series, what you make is going to be top quality.
Which makes sense because a lot of the stuff that's in like all of the weapons and such that you can get in GoldenEye are in other movies for Bond. There is the Man with the Golden Gun. That's where you get the golden gun from. Proximity Bias is from another thing. I think the laser is from Moonraker.
Yep.
And so they took the time and effort to know we got to put these in there. They're not in the movie. I said we're putting these in there.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, GoldenEye 64 is pretty much the biggest love letter to the Bond franchise ever made. Like it's a total love letter to James Bond and to the spy genre in general. but it was really cool to see them just to put that kind of detail and love into this game. And especially, because Bond is just such a great action packed franchise, it made sense to make something like this out of it.
Yeah, this fits its genre so well. I'm surprised they this is the iteration that you'd want to do that. And so the reason why I bring these two movie games up, GoldenEye and Spider-Man 2, is this is where we kind of hit that crux, where now whatever we want to put into a game, or reference the film, we can just go with that. If you've played through Spider-Man 2, the movie game, so I have to say the whole thing, even though that's not in the title, but
yeah.
There I could say Spider-Man 2, but there's like 12 Spider-Man 2s running around in the video game world. So when you do that, though, you can add and things like, if you've played through Spider-Man 2, it follows a lot of the story beats and things that were in the movie. And then there's a sidetrack with Felicia Hardy and as Black Cat, and then there's a couple of other side things. And I forget if that's the one where you get to fight Mysterio in that.
I'm pretty sure Mysterio was in Spider-Man 2, yeah.
I can't remember if it's Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 1, but at some point you get to fight Mysterio, and it's hilarious to me, because Mysterio is just a guy.
Wow.
Because he builds up this huge life meter, and I've played enough video games to know, oh no, 4 life meters, that I'm in trouble. Spider-Man punches him, well, and there they all go. Because I forget, Mysterio's just a guy.
I forgot about that part. He was using his illusions on the game's UI.
Yeah, that's clever.
It's a smart thing on that one.
Yeah.
So you get to play with this. So now we're at the sort of point where basically video games don't have the same stigma that they did before, when they were, always going to be a lousy or a cash grab or such. People can make work into that.
And I mean, there still are some games at this
yeah, I'm not saying they're not
are cash grabs, but
yeah.
It's getting harder to do that because at this point, making games is so much more involved. It basically costs as much to make a game as it does to make a movie, probably more at this point. So you can't just treat this the same as you do was like an action figure or something like that. That doesn't need a ton of design. There's going to be a lot of people that are working on this.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to shell out that kind of money, you want to make sure it's good.
Oh yeah. And there's some innovation from that one. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which Scott Pilgrim the movie versus the World the movie is based entirely on old, NES and games. That's part of the charm of it, based upon the comic series, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, though, when they translated it into the video game, they came out just before this new age of retro beat 'em up started popping up. So, because it came out before the River City Ransom and remake, the other River City Girls, and way before the Turtles, the new Turtles game that came out. Not the newest one, the one before that one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember it. But it's still an 8-bit beat 'em up, or 16-bit beat 'em up, which is super fun. And I don't know if they take, but it still follows the stage. Like, cool. I could play a game. I could play a version of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is just a beat 'em up, and I am sold.
Absolutely, and it just totally makes sense for that particular series and for that particular movie, and especially using the actual characters from the comic book as characters in the game, if I recall.
Another one I wanted to bring attention to, and like I said before, I was going to get back to this, which was Ghostbusters, the video game. So they wanted to make Ghostbusters the video game. Now this was back before we had the latest 2 Ghostbusters movies that we had. There was a script that was out for Ghostbusters 3, but nobody would bankroll it. It was too expensive, and they didn't know if they would have an interest. So they treat Ghostbusters the video game as an entry into the Philly franchise. So much so that the game developer, the game director who was directing this, put a stipulation in there that he didn't want the player character to have a voice. The player character has like 2 grunts and can drink water, and that's about all this, and a couple of sound effects, and that's about it. Because the script for the game was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. It's the last thing Harold Ramis wrote, is that as a production.
Wow.
And so
damn.
This would mean that the Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, who wrote the first Ghostbusters movie, and I think also the second Ghostbusters movie, also wrote the script for the Ghostbusters video game.
That's awesome.
So that way, it's the idea was to keep that comedic flow the way they wanted it to, so that way it felt just as natural as the film. So they wrote the same scripts for it, got the same actors for that one, and they all played their parts for that one really well. Like they're all like going back to an old hat. But to make sure that comedy works, rather than have an extra person to bounce things off of, like, what do you think or such? No, you don't get to talk anything. And I also love sort of the excuse for that, because like you can see on each one of the characters like suits, it has Stans, Venkman, and all yours says is Rookie, and they won't let you have a real name unless they know that you're going to keep the job for longer than 60 days.
Wow.
But yeah, I believe the line was something along the lines of, they were about to tell your name, only for one of them to cut him off. He goes, no names. I don't want to get attached.
Yeah. What's funny is that
that's great.
It's they put you in charge of I think Peter
they
comes
give
up
you all
with
the experimental gear that might blow up and kill you, and that's why they don't want to get attached.
Oh my God.
That is
not because you're going to quit within 60 days, but because you're probably not going to survive 60 days.
You're the test subject, which is also the game excuse for why you get all the cool weapons, because you're the test subject on that. And I love it because they're like, and they just riff on each other, and the comedy is solid, and yet it still has a very creepy atmosphere, just like the original movies do. It's just very, very well done for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But it's the genius part of that is knowing. The genius part of that is knowing that you are going to have this three of the biggest comedy actors of all time there, and two of the biggest comedy actors of all time, and then one of the best comedy writers on it. Just let them go. Let them go and make the script that they need to, and we'll work around that. Which is kind of a weird risk, but that's what they wanted to do with that.
I think most games, when they try and do that to the movie, they wind up screwing it up really bad. Like this, here's our script, and it's basically a movie script, and we're just going to kind of make a game around it. That usually doesn't wind up being a good game. And this is kind of an unusual exception to that.
Well, I mean, I think that it really boils down to the fact that, I mean, they made that with love, with love for the original movie and everything. And also, just having that original script for what was originally going to be Ghostbusters Goes to Hell. I think that's what it was originally titled.
That's what the original was titled.
Yeah.
And I know that the budget required for that was so astronomically high that they're like, we just can't.
Yeah, so that's why it made sense to finally just bring it out as a video game, because, I mean, you can really adequately tell that story without really, busting the bank on special effects and everything,
Mm-hmm. And then just let and making it super interactive where it still feels like that you're playing a video game, but also feels like I could sit back and watch this whole thing go down. Just like in the theater. Yeah,
it's like it would have been cool if they would have had like a little mode where you could just watch the story mode without playing the game. Kind of like what they do with Phoenix Wright nowadays.
Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, you could do more with it. Probably one of the more famous ones for game development is Shadows of Mordor, which is based off the Lord of the Rings games. So Shadows of Mordor has what's called the Nemesis system. It's an entire game engine that's designed so like it remembers what you did to make that guy, that boss harder against you, because he still remembers what you did to him.
Wow.
So like if they get away with it, then they'll come back. So like let's say you're fighting somebody and you manage to take him out with fire, but the guy gets away. Okay. This boss goes away. The boss comes back, and his arm is charred, but he's now wearing wearing thicker leather armor to prevent you from using fire again on him. And
okay.
the more often that you deal with him, the stronger they get because they remember what you did to fight them, and now they're just mad at you, and they'll come at you.
Oh wow. Yeah, I never played that game.
You're creating your own boss.
I never played that game, but that sounds compelling as hell. Actually, that sounds like an interesting mechanic.
The mechanic was so valuable when they made it. I forget who has the rights to Lord of the Rings now, the original Lord of the Rings, that they, I think it's Paramount, but Paramount actually owns the rights to that game engine, so that way nobody else can use the Nemesis system, which stinks because the Nemesis system is such a genius idea.
It really is.
Make your you if you are messing with some bosses, you can make the bosses harder, or they will remember you, and they'll become a tougher fight for it. Another good one that I know of is there is what is it? So Telltale Games is one that's kind of an interesting case for it. Telltale, one of the things that they did was pick up IP after IP after IP, and to make point-click adventure games. At first, they just wanted to make a point-click adventure game, and with their own in-house engine. And so when they built the game engine to test it out, they made a poker simulator game, which ended up becoming Poker Night, which ends up using the characters that they have, and they do Poker Night 2, which ends up having those little fun characters on there, and they have, and so they can do this engine, but also they get the ability and the IP to use Back to the Future, and they make Back to the Future with this alternate storyline, and Christopher Lloyd replaces his parts. And a lot of the other actors replace their parts to be in Back to the Future for this. And what they do is that they use like another alternate future that you have to solve as a point-click adventure with these characters for it, and it does extremely well. But it also gives Telltale the ability to get IPs for other titles and other movies, because their next movie after that is Jurassic Park, which is considered one of the worst Telltale games ever made.
Oof.
It's bad when it's like, we've made like something like 30 different games. This is the one we tanked it.
Yeah, I never actually played the Jurassic Park Telltale, but Back to the Future, sort of like Ghostbusters, it wasn't necessarily like we're just going to recreate the movie as a game. The Telltale Back to the Future was just another entry in the Back to the Future series. It was the next chapter.
Yeah, it is pretty much an unofficial fourth movie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so like that's the way they wanted to play it, and so they started. I wonder if they got any other movie IPs. I think those were the two big movie IPs that Telltale got.
I mean, they had other IPs, but I don't think that they were necessarily film specific.
Yeah. I think they had like Batman. They had Walking Dead, stuff like that.
And Walking Dead, when we talk about television shows, that is going to be important because that's what puts Telltale in the stratosphere.
But if Telltale could actually just work on The Wolf Among Us Part 2, I'm sorry. I know that it's a different Telltale because Telltale was burnt to the ground, and when they were brought back up, it was like with the same logo and stuff, but different people. But I don't care. We have gotten 2 trailers for The Wolf Among Us 2 and nothing else, and I am going to lose my mind if 2025 is not the year. Because the first one's so good. I'm sorry, it's off topic, but I had to say it because The Wolf Among Us Part 1 is phenomenal.
It's not off topic. We're talking about Telltale.
But it's off topic from the topic of the podcast.
Loosely, but yeah. I mean...
There's no movie called The Wolf Among Us.
Yet.
But then it would be the other way around. It'd be a video game movie. Which I would watch. I would 100% watch it. It's a great game.
Mm-hmm. If you want something that is weird about in the heyday of this, LucasArts which is the video game side of George Lucas's studios before he sold it over to Disney, had a ton of different games. Like which is weird, in the 90s, there was a ton of Indiana Jones games that they made based on the movies, which don't know why that was...
I forgot Indiana Jones. And what was it? The Fate of Atlantis, I think it was
Fate of
called.
Atlantis, yeah. So they treated it like they treated it like an entry to the films as well. But they did that back in the 90s, which is an earlier take, but it was George Lucas's studio. If they wanted to do that, they just did, which is why they made so many Star Wars games just in-house. I think playing through the Star Wars trilogy, there is like at least one of the original trilogy, at least one game comes out every couple of years for that. But yeah, like the latest Indiana Jones game is not made by LucasArts, which or is made by Lucas Film Games, I think is what it's called now, because it's not LucasArts.
Yeah.
After they sold it to Disney. But like the thing with that one is, man, they are still sitting on tons and tons of IPs for Lucas that they could do. So yeah, so these are some of the bigger games that we were talking about that's on there for it. Now, if you think they are all good on this one, so you think they're all good on that one, not exactly the same. See, there's Aliens, Colonial Marines. When that came out, it was super repetitive.
Also, it was broken. That game was functionally broken as well. And it wasn't it like some weird little bit of coding that somebody eventually fixed in that particular game.
Yeah, there was a little bit of coding that needed to be fixed, but nobody caught it.
Yeah.
And Aliens also has a lot of different sequels in video games and such for itself. Even Aliens vs. Predator, before Aliens vs. Predator became a movie, which is weird, but yeah, there's like 6 different Aliens vs. Predator games before they even thought about making a movie.
I would actually recommend that people play the PlayStation 1 Alien Trilogy game. I mean, not only is it a solid Doom clone, it's actually a pretty solid adaptation of the movies.
Oh yeah, it is really well done for that one. I remember. There was but yeah, because there was an alien game that came before Colonial Marines that was very stealth based, but also used a mic system for it. I just remember, I can't remember which alien game it was, but because of that stealth mechanic, I think it's Isolation.
Yeah,
somebody had their microphone set too high, set too sensitively, and they accidentally farted, and they got caught by the alien.
Yeah,
damn it!
They took that out in subsequent ports of the game, but on its first release, the microphone was so sensitive, you had to be so quiet, and yeah, the one guy farted and was found.
That is so amazing. My God.
Well, he found me because I ripped one. Okay. Taco night was not the way to do before testing this thing.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And I mean, when you're trying to hide from somebody, that is a concern. It's just not one that we usually worry about when we're playing a game where you're trying to hide from somebody.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, Aliens Isolation. Unfortunately, you can't. They took away. Just remember what they took away from us: the ability to get caught from a weird sneeze if you weren't paying attention. You pass gas. Somebody knocks on the door.
That is such a gamer thing to do. That is so gamer. Jeez.
But yeah, those are sort of the big ones that I can think of off the top of my head, anyway, for games that are both memorable. But my point with this one is like, yeah, so some of these games are some video games that are made from movies are some of the worst games of all time. Some of the best games out there are also inspired from movies. So,
Well, I mean, hell, you can pretty much say that Uncharted was pretty much an Indiana Jones. It was pretty much an Indiana Jones game before we had the current Indiana Jones game. So,
I'll talk about Uncharted all day.
Oh yeah,
I love those games so much.
Oh yeah,
but less whip.
Not enough whip. Exactly.
Not enough whip. I think that is all I've got. If you guys can think of any other games that you want to mention before we close out and such.
So there was one we didn't really get to talk about that was a personal favorite of mine when I was a kid, and that's Hook.
Oh, yeah.
You might remember the movie Hook. You know, Peter Pan is grown up, but Captain Hook comes and kidnaps his kids, and now he has to go back to Neverland, remember his roots as Peter Pan, and save the day. Hook was as a Genesis game, and I think it was on the the Super Nintendo too, but as I said, I was a Genesis kid. That was just such an amazing game. Just a really fun platformer action game. You got to fly as if you got some pixie dust. You occasionally got the kids to help you out. And it was really just fantastic as a game. It followed the movie only in the most technical of senses. Like, the first level was you going through the training that the kids put you through so you can remember to be Peter Pan. And then the rest was just, let's go check out these cool places in Neverland and have a fun adventure.
So it followed.
And then the last level was, oh, by the way, time to save your kids.
It followed Hook in the same sense that Kingdom Hearts follows Final Fantasy VIII.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
If I can bring up another game, this one might be purely nostalgia glasses saying that it's good. I haven't played it in a really, really long time. But back when The Lord of the Rings was coming out, I played the crap out of the Two Towers movie tie-in game. And I remember beating it gave you a trailer for Return of the King. And
wow.
After you beat it, and I remember I really loved it. There was one part that I got frustrated at, but it's because you're supposed to, like, you're trying to get from like the top of the screen basically, and you're trying to come down to the bottom where there's water, and not really like, it's not like isometric, but it's, you know, just like coming towards anyway. And there's like a boar or something that you have to get past, but the way you get past it is you juke it. And so like you're like over here and like, oh, I'm over here, and then as the thing comes running towards you, you have to run to the other side, and it runs past you, and you have to do that like 3 times or something. And it was just like, it was kind of tough. And so, but this one might be purely nostalgic goggles, but I played the shit out of that game when it first came out.
Right
I don't
on.
have it anymore.
I have a couple from the PlayStation era. For one, and I'm surprised nobody brought this up, was the 90s, was their version of the 90s Mummy movie. Brendan Fraser's The Mummy.
I never
It's like
played
there was a movie
God.
tie-in. It was kind of maybe a little bit of a Tomb Raider clone, sort of. But, I mean, it was a pretty fun game. And, of course, it had, you know, lots of Brendan Fraser, which is always great.
You can never go wrong.
No. And did y'all ever play the Jurassic Park fighting game on PlayStation?
What?
I
Can
know
you play
about
a
it. I haven't
T-Rex,
played it.
or is it?
I don't know
Yes,
if
you
you've
could
even
play a
heard of that.
T-Rex, I think. Yeah, there was
I have to play
a
it.
Jurassic Park fighting game. I think it was called Jurassic Park Rampage, maybe. But it was a 1v1 fighter and everything, and you could pick all of the different dinos that appeared in Jurassic Park. So yeah, you can have like a raptor versus a Dilophosaurus or something like that. It was pretty crazy.
Could the T-Rex?
You know, I mean,
I can't
not
believe
the
I've ever heard of that, because that sounds friggin' awesome.
Could the
yeah.
T-Rex
I mean,
reach?
I don't think so. Not that I can recall. But yeah, there was a 1v1 fighting game for Jurassic Park that was released on the PlayStation. I believe I have it in my modded PlayStation Classic. I think that I have the ROM for it. So yeah, those are a couple that I could think of. You know, maybe some that not a whole lot of people have really played or really seen.
This one might be a technicality because technically the game is a sequel. Oh, this one might be like a technicality on top of a technicality.
We love a technicality here.
Because it's like technicalityception. Because the Parasite Eve game is a sequel to the novel, and there is a movie that's based off of the book.
Oh, that's right.
I read the book, and the book is actually very accessible. I was a little intimidated by it at first because I was like, I've heard it's very scientific, but it's very accessible, and there's some pretty traumatizing chapters. But we can get into that another time. It's not for this podcast. But it's a really good book, but the video game is technically a sequel to the book and the movie, because the movie's a movie of the novel and not good. But
I mean, Jurassic Park is is a copy of the book from Michael Crichton.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I double checked. The movie comes out 1 year before the game gets made. You're in the good.
Yeah, it's just the game is actually a sequel to the novels. It's like when Squaresoft got the IP for Parasite Eve, they didn't want to do like an adaptation. The novel would make for a very boring game. It's a lot more it's like body horror type, but not in the Silent Hill way. It just would make for a very boring game. But so they were like, well, we want to there's a character named Mariko, and she ends up giving one of her kidneys to a donor, she gets a donor kidney. Oh my god. It's not Mariko. It was the woman. She died, and her kidneys ended up going to two different people. One of them went to Mariko. Mariko's child is Aya from the video game.
Okay.
And so she's actually she's like the child of Eve Prime. And then Brandon and I are doing a whole thing on it, but it's really interesting. But it is a sequel, and so I don't know if it counts. But Parasite Eve is a phenomenal game, and the book is really good, and that's what I'm ultimately getting at here.
Yeah. Gotta love Parasite Eve. We actually did a Let's Play of the first day of Parasite Eve for our Christmas Let's Play. Actually, because it is a Christmas game, so
that used to be
Christmas
my Christmas game. I was started on Christmas Day, and then you play it up through New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, because that's how long the game takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a fun little challenge. Did you guys ever play? And so, like this point, we're just spitballing games that we remember or such that still. So you couldn't. You brought up a weird thing that just made me think about this. Like this, one of my favorite games as a kid is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the video game, or it's Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure, because they actually put like a little. It's hilarious because they put a little carrot to make sure they wrote the word video game on there.
Oh,
like they forgot it and they slide it into the title. Like it's supposed to be here. So it's based off the movie. But the thing is that you go back in time to rescue a historical figure by coaxing them out of wherever they're hiding in another timeline. So, like, for example, you have to go find Al Capone, who is stuck in the first stage, who is in, which is a medieval castle. And you have to talk to a couple of people to find out where he is on the map, and then coax him in by using some bait that you have, like that thing's a pudding. This gum, these things are these little toys that he might be interested in.
Next up is Jimmy Hoffa, and then
Jimmy Hoffa, and you go and you start going back in time and you start rescuing these. Like,
were they treating Al Capone like a Pokemon? Like what the hell?
So there's a phone book list of all these historical characters that could be missing.
Is Jimmy Hoffa actually one of them? I was trying because Al Capone.
No,
that's a
Jimmy Hoffa is not one of them, but Robin Hood is, and so is a couple of other characters.
Al Capone is just a wild choice to put into a Bill and Ted video game. Was he like a villain?
No, just a guy.
Just a historical figure.
He's just yeah. The whole point of the game is you have
to. The movie was just them getting historical figures so they could make a cool school presentation.
Mm-hmm.
God, I haven't seen that movie in so long.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's pretty much just a school report. That's all. This is about.
No, I did actually watch. I watched them right when the newest one came out because I hadn't seen them in so long that I watched.
Oh yeah.
I watched them when the newest one came out, and the new one was really fun.
Mm-hmm. So the thing is that you have to, like, what you do is you open up a phone book to look for any of the to look at the historical figure, and if their phone number is wrong, that's the guy you got to get. Except it's procedurally generated, so it's not always the same person that you get.
Do they have to have a phone number? Like it couldn't be like Elizabeth Bathory.
No, it has to be a phone number because it's a phone booth.
But
that's right. It's a phone booth. Yeah,
but like it would have to be somebody from like the 19th or the 20th century.
No. So like going back in time, you use the phone number
so
to
Elizabeth
call the
Bathory
place that you're
could
going
be
to.
In there.
Yeah, it could be in there.
Nobody
they have a different
wants to
phone
meet
number.
her, though. Nobody should want to meet Elizabeth Bathory.
Yeah.
It's one of them
yeah.
555 numbers. So you go ahead and you go in there, and then you have to coax them out by using like things to defend yourself with, or just, hey, Genghis Khan, you want all this pudding? I got like 4 or 5 puddings I found. You would want that?
I cannot believe that we're like on the villain train here.
Genghis Khan was actually in the movie too.
He's
was,
not
you're
a
right.
good person. He's not a good person.
Nope.
Nobody said he was. Just saying that he would follow me if I had if I found enough pudding
I
cups.
just think
that
Jimmy Hoffa
Honestly,
and Elizabeth
same.
Bathory would not be out of place in the lineup we've created.
So here's the thing, which I think is fun. It's not a great game. Okay, this is an adventure game, but it's not very well done. But I do like that they still stick with the logic. So let's say you need to get some more stuff, and there's a innocent villager that wants to that talks to you, and you will either be playing Ted or Bill. Let's say you're playing Ted. You go to the villager, and Ted will say, and this villager says, "Hey, Bill left all this stuff for you." So, because the rules of time travel says somebody in the future has to remember to go back in time to leave these things behind, so that way you in the present can go use that later. So the reason why you can only play these characters one at a time is because the other one's getting you stuff, so that way you can use it in the past.
Oh my god!
But logic's sound.
Consistency.
And if I remember correctly, in this game, in the Bill and Ted game, it's like, wasn't there like some weird thing that you had to do to actually get to that time frame, like some weird little mini game that was really convoluted?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was a really
right.
convoluted mini game that you had to play, and if you didn't, you would get yourself lost in time.
Yeah. And you had to have like coins to do it correctly or something, for the phone.
You need coins. You need to get enough change so that way you can actually use the phone, and you also need skeleton keys so that way you can get, in case you get to jail, because you will put yourself in jail, because it's not hard.
What were they smoking back then when they were developing these games? Jeez.
Probably the same thing they were smoking when they made Bill and Ted. I'm
Apparently so.
Reason and rationality really didn't factor into that movie.
Yeah, needless to say.
But like, there was also, when going through that game, I started going, man, I went down to like Portland years ago, and like I finally found this game for $3. Makes sense. Not that great.
Yeah.
Then like a couple of years later, I went to a game store, and I'm like, Limited Run Games made a reprint of this? Why?
Right. They did. You're right.
And I'm like, Zombiehand was next to me. And I go, but why, Liz? Why? You're like, somebody else liked it, I guess.
Sorry, what was that? What was I sitting next to you for?
When I found the Limited Run Games version of Bill and Ted's original like NES game, I'm like,
just this local game store that we have down here, and Leo was like, "Oh my god, Bill and Ted," and I was like, "Oh, I've never played that before," and he goes, "It's not good." I don't know why it got a Limited Run Games release.
Well, I mean, Limited Run Games, they did Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, so but Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, that is a priceless game. That is the world is a better place for having that game in it. Like, seriously.
I remember playing the tie-in for Addams Family. I could not explain how this worked for the movie Addams Family, but I do know it's a tie-in because like every character in that has a big head version of their film counterpart.
Oh yeah,
so you're playing Raw Julia as Gomez, but his head is really huge.
Yeah, and then Christopher Lloyd as Fester and everything, just big old head and everything. Yeah, I think I remember the game that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. It was not good. Like, it was super convoluted, and like you had to solve something like 15 different puzzles in the right order. You're supposed to rescue every member of the family. The only one I could ever rescue is Lurch, because that one's easy. You find a bell that rings for Lurch. That's it. He'll come by. You're done.
Yeah.
Pugsley's stuck in a chimney, and he'll be there forever. Anyone else have any of those? Which painfully remember. Oh, Rambo had an NES game with a weird RPG mechanic for no real reason.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You start with a knife, you level up to different weapons.
Oh, that's right.
By the end of it, you got hand grenades.
Why would they do that in an action platformer or shooter? Like, what the hell?
I don't know. This was the same time frame where just because you could upgrade doesn't mean that you got something better. Because, like, you could use the rifle, which shot forward, but now that you had grenades, you had to throw them up and over.
Yeah.
Up and over to everything. Oh, and then Godzilla's whole litany of games that they have, which go from amazing to, oh man, what were we thinking?
Yeah, I remember the AVGN episode of all the Godzilla games. It's like, yeah, there were some stinkers, needless to say.
And then you can have the meta game, which is Surf Ninjas on a Game Gear, which is played by Surf Ninjas in the movie Surf Ninjas while using that Surf Ninjas Game Gear.
Surf Ninjaception.
Yeah, what can you say about that? You know,
it wasn't a great movie. It wasn't a great game.
Yeah, what was the Game Gear could predict the future or something? That's what it was.
Yeah, the Game Gear would make him an oracle so he could see parts and pieces of the future.
Oh,
but it also let him like minorly manipulate the future.
Oh, that
it was
that's
confusing.
Cool. Yeah.
Anybody else have anything else before we like sign this one off? I think
really.
If we just went through a litany of just a list of all these, we'd be here all day.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a ton of them.
It's just that most of them are kind of forgettable. Be a really good game, be a really bad game, but don't ever be forgettable.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a bad game, people will riff on you and they'll talk about you forever. If you're a good game, you'll live up till legend. If you're forgettable, only the most obscure people who will know that even if you exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the hardcore collectors.
Mm-hmm. And they're not playing you. They just want to have you as a collection.
Exactly. They just want to follow you away. That's all they're going to do to you.
You're in my box. Ironically, unlike the Toy Story game, which was a thing. So, that being said, that is basically what we got going on here. Video games, they're being good, bad, and just forgettable, or they just kicked up and such. There's a whole litany of different weird issue games on there. And this doesn't even extend to just tie-ins for console games. There used to be MMOs, which almost every one of them have, very few of them are still going that are based on the video game. You remember the Matrix MMO?
I was just thinking about that one. Yeah, that's exactly what I first thought of.
It existed. It did not do well. It was a mess of storylines and such, but the combat was so terrible that nobody played it at all.
That's a damn shame.
That's when you get too much into your storyline. The concept was interesting, but not the rest of it.
Yeah.
All right. That being said, our next episode will be released on May 16th. Until then, this is Gaming Theater Podcast, logging out. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Laters, y'all.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game. Stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.